Hello, welcome to today's class. My name is Jon Witt and this is a Hatha yoga class. So a base level class to give you a good foundation. There's things that you may not be able to do, which I think is good. You know, you're learning about things that may actually not be good for yourself, and then you'll hopefully over time you'll learn what is actually good for yourself in terms of building up a better practice. So I'm going to be doing some balance work today. So if you have a wall, great. If you don't have a wall space, you could even just use like a corner, like a doorway. You know, you don't need a full wall. I mean, it's nice to have. A chair would work as well. But I think balance is a very important thing to maintain. So it's something that I practice every day. It's something that is essential in obviously moving and being able. So if you've been liking the classes, you can share my information. It helps me help other people. All my information is on my website. It's jonwittyoga.com. And I'll be changing my Instagram and my Facebook accounts because I've been having some technical difficulties. So my new Facebook account will be jonwittyoga.movement.nyc. And then my Instagram account will be jonwittyoga.movement. So we could refollow or become friends that way so that you'll be updated with the current classes. These classes are on my YouTube channel, so if you're not a subscriber, you subscribe and then you're notified when I am uploading new videos. Okay, so I'm going to start in just a standing position, and then I'm going to be moving my pelvis in a rotation. Rotations are probably the easiest thing to learn in terms of moving the pelvis. So it's really super basic, but in moving the pelvis, my whole body's moving as my pelvis is moving. So if you find, and this covers a lot, you need your pelvis to move sideways for side bending. You need it to move forward for back bending. You need to pull it back for forward bending. So it's a very basic but essential motion in helping you move better. So you can relax the arms or have the hands on the hips. The hands on the hips help you move them, and you can certainly keep them there. So I'm going to circle around in the opposite direction, and then in moving my pelvis, right, I'm moving my upper body, and find the right speed, you know. So you need to move really slow. You can move really slow. If you haven't done these in a while, or if you've never done them before, you know, it can be difficult. So maybe you only need just a few, but over time you could do 30 seconds, a minute, I think is a good starting point. But then as you see that it's good for you, you can add more frequency. And then coming back in the middle. So with people with learning things, if it's really good, they'll do it too much, right? When you learn something and it's really like, oh, this is the best thing ever, people do it too much. And then when things hurt, people totally throw it out, you know, and say like, oh, I shouldn't do that. But if you add a little bit of it, say this was difficult for you and it is actually a little bit painful, I would stick with it, right? Try it. And then just a little bit over time. But then again, you don't want to be too enthusiastic. I see that so often with people, is that I'll show them something and then the next time I see them, they're like, oh, I overdid it, whatever the exercise may be. So I'm just elevating one side of my pelvis and then dropping the other. So musculature around the pelvis can get really, really tight. So think of these types of exercises are to help loosen up the pelvis. And as the pelvis moves better, it's going to help with you, the way that you sit and the way that you stand, and most certainly going to help you in the way that you walk, which I think is a great practice in itself, just really working on biomechanics of walking. So I'm coming back in the middle, and I'm going to be bringing my tailbone down, and then I'm sticking my butt out. So bringing the tailbone down, and it could be a partial range of motion, which I really like for people is you don't have a lot of range of motion, you can use some of the range of motion and then over time add more. So I'm sticking it out again, bringing it down, sticking it out, bringing it down, Sticking it out one more time, and then bringing the pelvis back down into this is a posterior tilt. So for back bending, plank, for a lot of women, standing with a little bit more tailbone down can be very helpful for your lower back, and then just coming back up into a standing position. So I'm going to work on balancing. I'm going to stack, or I'm going to step my left foot in front of my right. So this is a straight line. And then when I'm in this straight line, if I can, I'm going to close my eyes, right? But if you can't do that, right, you could just keep the eyes open. If it's already difficult for you, I think it's probably better to keep the eyes open unless you're using a wall. Like if I had a wall and I'm closing my eyes, well, then the wall I could always, refer to if I needed that for support. And then I'm going to open the eyes and bringing the left foot next to the right, and then the right foot forward. So initially start with your feet a little crooked, and then over time as your balance improves, then you can line up the feet more that they're straight. Super basic. And let's say you've been doing yoga a lot, there's like a handful of poses that are repetitively used, and the more you use them, the better you get at them. So it kind of gives you a false sense of, I'm good at balance, my balance is good. But then when you add something like this, which is actually a little bit more complicated to balance in, it can give you kind of a measuring stick as far as how well is your balance. And then the feet are just back into a neutral position. But I'm going to take my feet out into a wide position. I'm going to turn my feet out, and then I'm bending my knees and I'm pushing my thighs apart, and then I'm in that posterior tilt. So I'm bringing the tailbone down and I'm taking the arms out. And I'm going to turn my thumbs down, right? Internal rotation of the shoulders. And then I'm going to rotate my thumbs back in space. So I'm rotating through the shoulders. So I'm really working at moving the arms more gradually, right? I'm going to rotate it down one more time, and then I'm going to rotate it back, right? Working on just moving the shoulders. Maybe one shoulder doesn't rotate as well. That's really common. And then you can bring the arms down and the legs straight. So just take a couple deep breaths. I'm going to go back into it. Take the arms out wide, bend the knees, push the knees apart. Again, you don't have to sit super low, but as you're pushing your legs apart, you could bring more of the tailbone down and lift more from the crown. So you're getting more traction. But the inner thighs can be very tight. The outsides of the hips can be very weak. So this kind of covers both, which I think is essential in keeping strong. So I'm coming back up, and then I'm bringing my arms down. I'm just going to bring the feet back into the middle, and I'm going to stretch out a little bit of the quadricep, which if you're not sitting on the floor in like hero's pose, this is a good alternative. So I'm bending my left knee and I'm pulling it up just for a moment, and then I'm going to bring it down. So I'm taking it up just for a few seconds, and you may not touch the foot, which is okay, right? And then bringing it down, and then taking it up, and then grabbing either the shin or the foot, and then in a static position, and say it's tight, right? Pull for a few seconds, actively pull with your arm, and then let it relax. Don't pull crazy, because if the tissues aren't really ready to move, it can distort the knee, and then the knee can have some discomfort. It's one of the reasons why the knee can hurt. And then you can bring the left leg down, and I'm going to turn just so you have a profile. So I'm bending my knee, I'm reaching with my hand, but the hand's just a measuring point, right? And then bringing the foot down, taking it up again, so lifting it, bringing it down, taking it up, so strengthening the hamstring, bringing it down, and then taking it up. So if you have good flexibility, it's not to say that you shouldn't grab the leg or the foot, but you probably don't need it as much. Like I'm pretty, I have more than enough flexibility in this position, but you may just need to stretch it out. But it gets into the abdomen, the psoas, and trying to keep your body in a more upright position. So when you're standing today or sitting today, just kind of notice how your head is positioned, because your head will tell you if you could be sitting better or standing better, even walking better, and then bringing the foot down. So I'm going to take the feet out wide. I'm just going to do some basic positions in terms of yoga, and then we'll go back into some more balancing positions. So take the feet out wide, and then as the feet are wide, turn the right foot out to the right, and just feel what it's like to push the legs apart. So as I'm pushing my legs apart, I may need more or less of this, right? I'm going to take the arms up to the height of my shoulders. I'm bending my right knee, and then as I'm bending my right knee, I'm assessing if I should push more. So if you're tight or inflexible, most likely you could use more, right? You could push out. And if you were very flexible, which happens for people, right? You could hug more into the middle, and that can be beneficial as well. But I'm going to go into a side bend, just going to my right elbow or my forearm. I could reach the floor or a block, right? If I had that flexibility. But just play around with moving your body lower to your leg, and also being up. So when I'm changing my positions, I'm just assessing like what actually is better for me, as opposed to stretching or exposing. So it's not so much that I want to always be in the same position, right? Because you can wear it out. So I'm moving the tailbone down as we did earlier, and I'm rotating more if I need it. There's days that I'm not really pushing the envelope. But I'm going to take my left arm up, I'm reaching towards the back room or the back wall, whatever that is for you. Then I'm taking the arm up, and then I may bring it forward in space. Right? And static holds are great if you have the flexibility. But if you don't, I would take it up and I would move it. Rather than holding it statically, I would move it. But if you had like bursitis, things can get complicated. And if things are complicated for you, you really do need someone to work with you personally, right? So come back up into warrior two, bringing the tailbone down, pushing the thighs apart, and then having the right leg straight. So turn the right foot in. I'm going to have my feet turned in. I'm just going to do a quarter of a forward bend. So when I'm coming forward, this might be my forward bend, right? But I'm purposely keeping my body upright to strengthen my back. So if you're not doing any kind of functional kind of weight training, we're trying to get our back stronger in extension with our yoga. So I'm coming forward, but I'm pushing my thighs apart, or I'm hugging my legs in, and my shoulder blades are moving in, and it's good to time yourself. I'm not timing it, but I definitely spend enough time in it where I'm progressing more, and then changing the positions as I've mentioned. So push through the feet and bring yourself up. So I'm going to turn the right foot in and the left foot away from the back foot. And then again, I'm pushing my thighs apart, or I'm hugging my thighs in. So I'm going to take the arms out wide. I'm going to push through the feet and extend through the upper portion of my skull. And I'm trying to expand in many different directions. So I'm not just going up, right? I'm trying to be more three-dimensional. So I'm going to bring my left forearm on my left thigh, my right hand on my right hip, and it could stay here. So those of you that have, shoulder pain, you could be here the whole time, right? But I'm going to be taking the arm back, right, in space. And then as I'm bringing it back, I may hold it in certain angles, which you'd never ever see in a yoga app, right? But different angles will provide different benefits. So if I'm taking the arm up, great. If I'm bringing it forward, fantastic. And if you're, like I said, if you're flexible enough, you can certainly hold, whatever position you may, right? Or interested in developing. I'm going to take the arm back and up again to the back side, and then I'm bringing it forward. So it's like a semicircle, right? So bringing it forward, keeping the belly, keeping the ribs in, using my feet. You could turn your head to the top arm, which is nice for the neck. And then taking yourself back up into a warrior two, right? Driving the legs apart. If you can't sit on the floor comfortably, these are great positions. And then having the left leg straight, turning the left foot in, and then just stepping the feet back into the middle where you're just standing neutral. So just look straight up, look up, measure your nose to the ceiling. You might see that your head turns a certain way. And then bring the head forward and bring your chin in towards your chest. So stretch out your neck. So like if you said, hey, I'm really interested in like classical yoga and I want to do shoulder stand, I want to do plow, there's a lot of prep work that I would do in terms of getting your neck prepared for that. I wouldn't just put you in the position, especially, hate to say a certain age, right? But if you haven't done yoga in a long, long time, right, you want to prepare yourself. So bringing the chin in is exposing all of the muscles in my back, my neck, and bringing it forward and then bringing it up. And I'm doing these slow, kind of methodically longer, but it's so good for the neck, right? I'm lifting the chin, lifting the chest. I am lifting the chest, but I'm not arcing. And then bringing the head down, bringing it forward. So just bring it passively, which is a great starting point. And I like effort more than just weight. Like some people just pull on their head. So use a little bit of effort and then exposing more of the neck and of the spine. And then bringing the head back into a neutral position. But you should be able to turn the head more comfortably. All right, but I'm going to do a bit more warrior type of positions with some balancing. So my feet are forward here. I'm going to bend my knees and I'm stepping my left foot back into a lunge. And then in a lunge, I'm going to take the arms up into an overhead position. So again, I'm trying to get the tailbone down. So I often see this with people is that they're just kind of, they're in this like peacock position, right? So I'm getting the tailbone down so that I'm more in my legs and I'm more in my abdomen. And just because the class is shorter, I'm going to make it a little bit stronger. I'm going to lift the heel of my right foot. So I'm purposely lifting the heel to make it more difficult. Right? Do you want your yoga to be more efficient or do you want to get stronger? So if I was doing yoga for 3 hours or something like that, right, I'd want to make it more efficient. But when I only have like 10 minutes or 20 minutes, I'm definitely making it stronger, right? So I'm going to have the right heel down. I'm going to bring the arms down. I'm going to step the left foot forward and then stepping the right foot back. And then I'm upright. I'm getting the tailbone down. Then I'm bending the left knee and taking the arms up. So that's like a simple way of correcting it. There's other ways, right? It's just, that's what I'm using today. But as I'm lifting, all right, I'm really trying to get stronger and just feel what's actually holding you back from going further into a greater range of motion. Right? So lifting the heel. So understanding that can be a great information as far as how to make your practice better. So let's say your leg is shaking, right? It's good. It's getting stronger. Not that I'm trying to go to that level where my leg is completely fatiguing. So I'm going to lower the heel, I'm going to take the arms down, and then I'm stepping my right foot forward. And again, just practice standing. So get into your feet, relax your arms. Your bum doesn't have to be tight, but might be something that you want to use for a period of time to build up a better standing position. So I'm going to do a little bit more of the lunge. I'm going to step my left foot back. And then with my left foot back, I'm up in an overhead position. Again, use the wall or a chair and just play around with the transition. So I'm moving my left foot in a bit closer where my foot's always down, right? And the wall is in front of me if I need it. But then I'm going to step back. So with yoga, I find people they know it's coming, right? They know it's coming, so they get good at what's coming, but really the unpredictable is really what's better if you can, right? So I'm going to come forward and balance on my right foot where I'm coming forward, but I'm going to do it with a slight bend in my knee, which is really good for those of you that don't have flexibility. But I think it's more important to have stronger legs, and then you can work on flexibility. Like flexibility is usually what people want, but what they really need is to get stronger. And getting stronger, then anybody can get more flexible. So you could get the legs straight. We're almost done. I'm going to come up into a high lunge. And with high lunging, it's more difficult to balance. It's easier on the spine. I love warrior one. That could be the position. So when I'm in a lunge, I'm going to make it bigger, right? I'm going to make it bigger. I'm moving into a greater range of motion so that my arms are up and maybe my knee isn't this low. But bring yourself back up to standing and bring the arms down and just step the left foot in a little bit closer. And I'm not going to come super far forward with this, but I'm going to stretch out the back of your leg. So I'm just coming forward, right? But at any point you're like, oh, I don't know about this for my back. Maybe you don't come so far forward. I'm really not coming that far forward. So I'm targeting more of my rotators rather than my hamstring. I mean, I'm a very active person. So my hamstrings are actually pretty good. And because I am so active, I still have, tightness in my hips. And then bringing myself back up, like I still run, I still jump. I'm going to step my left foot forward, and then I'm stepping my right foot back. And then I'm bringing the tailbone down, coming up into an overhead position, right? Extending up. And again, just maybe you come in and out of the pose just to kind of see like how you can make it better. So I'm going to move my right foot in a bit closer, right? And just rather than just getting it or nailing it, right? I'm going to work it a little bit more. So then I'm stepping back, I'm up, right? Again, you want to be able to, when someone steps in front of you, can you step to the side? Could you step back? Could you make the decision quick to go forward more? I mean, these are things that I think are really a good thing to have. So I'm moving my right foot in, I'm coming forward, and then I'm bending my left knee. And even though it's a small range of motion, it could be slightly bigger or smaller, right? Not to say that one angle is optimal, right? But my knee is bent, I'm extending my arm. Arms overhead is great. I just wouldn't do that if I knew that your back wasn't very strong. At first I wouldn't use it. So I'm coming back up into the lunge, and then as I'm up in the lunge, right, if I can, I'm going to increase the range of motion. So my knee is purposely going past my toes, right? Which is good for the knee. It's very good for the knee. Like I said earlier, it may hurt, right? So just go be before that point. And then as your legs get stronger and they get healthier, then you can go into a deeper range. But you don't have to go as low as I am, right, to benefit. But it's nice to develop. And then have the left leg straight, bring the arms down, move the right foot in a bit closer, and then you're going to come forward and pulling the left hip back in space, right? When my back is straight, I'm using strength. When I'm lifting my chest, I'm out of my lower back. You can even look forward. And as you got stronger with this, it could be you coming into it and then coming out of it, but then going back into it, which is a nice approach to develop greater depth, right? You say you want to develop more, then bringing yourself back up and stepping your right foot forward. Just take a couple deep breaths, observe your weight in your feet, observe the way that you're standing, you're breathing. I'm going to come down on my hands and my knees. So when you come down onto your hands, have the hands just underneath the shoulders, have the hands turned out a little bit, and just move the weight around to adjust the hands, the wrist. So moving side to side, which is easier on the hands, the wrist, than moving forward and back. It's good to be on your hands, all fours. These are great positions. I'm going to take the hands off the mat to the left, and I'm going to look high over the left shoulder. And I'll say, hey, look above the shoulder, and people are looking around the arm. That's a good starting point, but be able to lift your head over time over the shoulder. Try to see things in your apartment or your house where you typically can't see. And take the hands back into the middle, look over to the right side. So as you look over the right, lift the head, lift the chest. Super basic, but if you want to continue to drive a car, ride a bike, it comes from your neck, right? You really do have to be able to look around. and then coming back into the middle. And then as I'm back in the middle, I'm going to have the hands just underneath the shoulders and protract the shoulders. Get the shoulders to move out wider, and then just let it relax. And then push, 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 push. Right? Get it, get comfortable with pushing pretty hard here, and then let it relax, and then push one more time. So if I couldn't come up into plank, I could sit on blocks, right? There's a lot of different things you could do on the floor. But I will come up into plank. You can lift the knees, and then I'm purposely making it stronger through my abdomen and through my ribs. So again, being less efficient so that I don't really have to hold it as long. Long holds are good, very good for your skeletal system. But I like a more active, shorter hold for people because it's more integrated. So go back up into a down dog, pedal the legs out, bend the knees if you need to, right? Think inner thighs are moving back, and then this will just help widen out your posterior, your lower back. I'm going to come forward and through into an up dog. My arms are straight. I'm lifting up away from my hands, my fingers. I'm obviously extending here. And then I'm pulling back up into a down dog, right? So just for a moment, if you can, make it shorter and try to lift the toes off the floor. So you could lower the toes and lift the toes. Lower the toes, lift the toes. Then come back down on the knees and sit, have the toes tucked and sit back towards the feet, just a little bit. So if it's really tight, which it's super common for people, this is a very difficult position for people. So just for a moment, come forward, untuck the toes, and sit back towards the feet. So rather than not doing something like this, just do a little bit, just a few seconds. And then over time, right, your body's going to adapt and you'll be able to do more, right? So untuck the toes and sit back on the feet. Like that's kind of opposite to the classical approach of yoga. Is like it's usually just long hold, which works and can work, but it can also just kind of frustrate people and people don't necessarily want to do it. So I'm going to untuck the toes and sit back, right? But these are things I would, I do them daily. You don't have to do them daily. I mean, if you have the time, of course. But getting into like more of seeing what you actually need, then you can be a little bit more selective with, because you don't always have an hour to practice. I know that for people. But I'm going to come back onto my hands. I'm going to lift up into plank, right? Push, push, push through the hands, right? And then what I'm going to do is go up into down dog. And then as I'm going back up into down dog, I want to think that I'm getting pulled in two oppositions, right? Just to take the pressure off the knees, I'm here. So I think someone's pulling on your arms, someone's pulling back on your hips, and then coming forward with your feet. As you come forward with your feet, walk your hands back towards your feet. Now, if you can't forward bend, have your elbows above your knees, be an extension. And then say you're like, I don't know if I should be forward. You have a history of herniation. Just stand yourself back up. But if you've been doing yoga for a while, right, rather than always extending around your back, right, it's majority of the spine rounds. And if you're not really moving it that way, I think it's a big reason why it gets so weak and it gets so frail and it gets calcified for people. So for osteopenia and osteoporosis, right, no forward bending for a while. But then as your back gets stronger, I would reintroduce it, in a subtle way. But I'm down here and I'm on an angle and I'm purposely rounding my back, right? And then I'm bringing it back into the other side and I'm purposely rounding my back. And I'm just trying to discover which angle is actually better for me. They're probably all good for you, but one angle might be better than the other, right? But I'm purposely taking the hands off the floor and I'm rounding. Right? Like if I had a physio ball in my chest, right? My whole back would be rounding, right? That's what I'm trying to do. So I don't feel this at all in my lower back. I feel it all through my upper back, right? So I'm slowly bringing myself back up to standing and the tailbone's down and the pubic bone's up, just basically in a standing position. But I'm going to extend. I'm extending up, not lifting my chin. I'm really just trying to extend through the upper back, right? And then I'm just coming neutral. So I'm gonna focus a little bit more on that because I think it is important. I'm not gonna do a lot of it, but maybe you're concerned with being all the way forward. There's a way to do it where you don't have to be all the way forward. So I'm just kind of off to the, I'm just forward, right? I'm not hinging from the hips, I'm just rounding, right? Arms are relaxed, and then I'm lifting, but I'm not lifting my head, I'm only lifting the thoracic. It's smaller, but it's actually a bigger, for me, it's actually a bigger sensation. Like I could take my head back more, and it's more obvious in certain ways, but I'm gonna round my back. I'm gonna do this a few more times. So I'm rounding, the arms are relaxed, and then I'm lifting, keeping the head neutral, but I'm just extending through my thoracic. Big extension. And because it's small, it can be really, you can feel really hot from something like this, right? So rounding one last time. Right? And I'm not doing it really long. And then back up. So in doing it, like I said, shorter, it's a little bit safer, and you can kind of test it out. But opposed to like me just doing it for 30 seconds or a minute, that might be too long for you initially. But this is a shorter kind of hold, right? And then I'm coming back and, just neutral. So I'm just gonna be side bending to the left. Super basic, leaning to the left. And the reason my arms are up overhead is because when you do it that way, you fold. You really do fold in half, and you'll probably bend the same way. But when it's subtle like this, you can be a little bit more specific. Like I can be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna lift more through the upper half of my rib cage, or maybe I'm gonna lift more through the lower half of my rib cage. That all adds a different element than taking yourself back up and then leaning to the right and lifting through the left. And this is, so basic that you could do it any time. And that's why I teach it so much in this class, is that, you don't really need, it's nice to do flashier things or more dynamic things, but just in terms of maintenance, like keeping yourself healthy, some of the more basic things are really what you could stick to. Right? And then bringing yourself back up. And then when you come up, just turn your head to the right and keep your body neutral, but just turning, then turning your head to center, and then turning your head to the left. Right? And use a little bit of effort, right? And you'll feel how your neck is being exposed more. And then back to center. So this is just a head tilt. So I'm just tilting the head to the right shoulder. Right? Relax the arms. Then bringing it up, and then taking it to the left side, right? And just use a little bit of effort if you can. And then back up. And then I'm gonna go to the right again. And I'm doing these really slow, but as you get more familiar with them, it can be repetitive. But you really have to have the awareness of, like, is it good for you, right? Because you could just mindlessly do it. It's like someone that is mindlessly brushing their teeth and they wear off the enamel, right? You want to be really aware of it. Then lifting the head and then taking the head over to the left side, right? Just super basic, but what I did the last few minutes, you should be standing better from it. So just go back into having your feet just neutral, but lift the left heel off the floor and then lower it down and then lift. So just like this, it's going to help spread out the toes. So partially why some people can't balance is because their toes are overlapping. So what I did on the floor is more obvious. This is much easier. But if you can, I'm going to be moving my leg in space. So I'm rotating my thigh. I'm circulating the femur. And by moving the femur, it's going to help in manipulating the foot. But like I said, if you had something going on in your knee or your hip, you might want to just lift and lower the heel. But I'm going to go in the opposite direction. And as the foot starts to become more pliable, it certainly will help with your balance. And then you can bring the heel down. So I'm going to lift the right heel up. With the right heel up, just basic. but I could lower the heel and then lift the heel. And if I asked you, is it even? You'd say, of course it's even. But if you bring the weight into the big toe, you'd be like, oh no, maybe I didn't have as much weight as I thought. Or bringing more weight into the baby toe, you might actually feel that it's not even, which is okay, right? But then you can get it balanced. But I'm going to circle the thigh in space, right? And in moving the thigh to help with, again, manipulating the foot. So the foot, it's many bones, and it should be able to, the hand obviously moves very eclectically, but I really believe the foot has similar abilities. It's just you have to work at it. So the foot has more pliability to it. But this can be quite painful, is I'm going to tuck the left big toe underneath, just the big toe. So it's just underneath me. And if this is really hard, do it in a chair. And if you need a softer surface, flip up your yoga mat and do this. But just manipulating the joint of the toes is a good thing. And then I'm bringing that big toe underneath, and then I'm bringing the right big toe underneath. And as I'm doing this, the heel is descending, right? This can be really, really painful. So like I said, say it's like, oh, this is so hard. Do it for a few seconds and then repeat it, right? You don't have to stay in it. Right? I wish it was just that simple. Just do it and everything is going to be great. It's really not that simple. And then I'm going to untuck the toes, but then I'm going to bring all of the toes underneath with the exception of the big toe. And just getting the foot. So if you have really flat feet, this can be really hard. And for those of you that have supinated feet, be a little easier, but still good, right? To manipulate the foot like this. Toes, for the most part, are always in extension. You're never flexing them. So then you can bring the toes underneath where they're flat, and then I'm going to bring all of the toes underneath, and then just lowering the heel. And my toe just cracked. They might crack. I'm not going for that. I'm not trying for that, but it may happen. And the heel is descending. But again, if it's really, really hard, do it in a chair. Just sit down and do these. And if it's really difficult, if you can reach your foot, you can use your hand to manipulate the toes, or you could get someone to do it for you. But I think so important. This is so important. But I'm going to bring that toe down. But I'm going to lift, just for time constraint, I'm going to lift both of my big toes up at the same time. So just the big toes are lifting and lowering. And they may not lift and lower, but over time they can. And then just keep the big toes down, but lift every other toe. And you can, of course, look at them. You can look in a mirror. But this will help with your balance. That's why I'm doing it. But then just lift the baby toe up off the floor. It's tricky, right? And you could do it one side, because if you can't get it, just use that one side to get the toes to lift up and lower. But an easy way to get the toes to be stronger is just scrunch them up and then fan them out. Scrunch them up and then fan them out. So I'm going to go back to the original position that I used in terms of balance, and maybe you can find that it's easier. So have your left foot in front of your right foot. Just basic. Have your body upright. Look forward. Maybe you can close the eyes. And then bringing your left foot next to your right, and then having your right foot in front of your left. It's basic. Just a straight line. And then again, if you can close the eyes, great. But when you close the eyes, it will put you off balance, which I think is a good thing because it's going to require more stability in the feet. Try not to grip through the toes. You can at times. And then you can open the eyes, and then the right foot's next to the left. So I'm going to come down on the ground and work a little bit on your hips, a little bit on your feet. But you could do it on a softer surface. So if being on the floor is really hard for you, a big fluffy carpet or like a big thick like a Pilates mat, like something like that. Those are great. So I'm coming down, and then as I'm sitting, I'm going to have my feet a little bit wider than my shoulders, and I'm going to be moving my legs in space. So my left leg is moving in, and then my left leg is moving out. So it's internal and external rotation, right? But maybe you can't move in a full range of motion, but just see how the bones are moving through space. And that can kind of tell you like, oh, I'm lacking external rotation, or I'm lacking internal rotation. You know, and it may be one day that it's really difficult for you. This is common for people that I work with. Right? They panic. Right? There's really nothing to worry about. It's just, this is happening, and this is what I'm going to do about it. Right? I mean, that like, there's most days I feel incredible, right? I feel amazing. And then there's days that things come up and I don't, but I know what to do to get myself back into, you know, feeling great again. So I'm taking my legs over to the right, and then with my legs over to the right, I'm going to come forward, straight forward over my leg, like keeping my back straight. So I'm coming forward over the leg. But what I'm doing is, and you can't see it, is that I'm trying to lift the leg to my face, like lifting the leg to my chest. I'm not trying to take it off the floor. The action is that I'm pulling it in, and that's what's exposing the outside of my hip, right? Just because if you do a lot of walking, or even if you're inactive, these muscles get really tight. So it's either you're an active person and they're tight, or you're an inactive person and they're tight, right? It's very common that it's going to be restricting for you. So bring yourself up, and then just sit, if you can, sit more over the left hip. And it's common that you experience kind of like a twinge or some pain, right? Bring less weight into your pelvis, and that can help. The back knee can be elevated, right? The back foot could be kind of in more of a tuck position. But lift the knee, the left knee, and keep the legs apart for, a few breaths. So push the legs apart really, really wide, and say you're like, oh, this is so much better for me, right? It's good to move the legs, but if you had hip impingement, something like this probably would be better, right? But just, I think it is good to move the legs. So I'm taking the legs in, and that's a whole different thing. Is why the hip is impinged is, it's probably inactivity or overuse, right? So I'm coming forward. As I'm coming forward, right, I'm keeping my back straight. I'm lifting myself up. And I love pigeon, right? Pigeon's a great position, but it's either too much weight for people. They don't necessarily know that it's too much weight, or the inflexibility can be too much for the knee or too much for the hip. Something like this is a bit more basic, but I like it because you can manipulate it a little bit more, and it's more on your terms. Like you can adjust the intensity. So then I'm coming up if I need to, right? And then when I'm coming up again and I'm coming forward, is that I'm actively lifting the leg into my chest, and that's what's stretching out my back. That's what's stretching out my hip. So I love yin yoga because it's so calming, but you might actually need more physical support in these positions. So it's not to say that you shouldn't just relax in them, but you may actually need them, and that's why I teach these positions the way that I do. And then bringing yourself back up. So I'm going to do a little bit more for the outsides of your hips, and it's a little bit trickier to do just simple side bending cross-legged. I usually do that in this class, but you could do that. But I'm going to add something a little bit different. Is I'm going to sit. I'm sitting on my feet, right? But then as I'm sitting on my feet, I'm going to transfer my hips over to my right side. So that I'm like in a mermaid type of position, right? But if I'm really inflexible, see how far over I am? It could look like this, right? But as it gets easier, then I'm more upright, right? And just an easier transition. Now, if you're good with this, you could come back on your feet, but just an easier transition just for those is see how I swung the legs over, and that's much easier, way easier, but it's not as much leverage. So I was here, right? Then I'm coming up onto the feet again, and then I'm transferring the weight over. Of course, use your hands, right? I'm just showing you that you don't have to use your hands. So I'm just over, and this is just this area can be really, really locked up for people. So it's just a good way to get into it. I'm gonna do it a couple more times. So use blocks on your hands, right, to take some of the weight off of your feet, off of your knees, off of your hips, and then sitting into this. And then as you sit into it, feet could be stacked. In yoga, it's usually a twist. I'm just using it more for the manipulation of the hips, but it's a great position in terms of twisting. You'll get the twist in your back, right? But maybe you need to swing the legs. If I can, I'm going to sit on my feet for a moment, right? And then swiveling the hips over to the other side, and then I'm more into my left hip, right? But like I said, you'll be able to move more freely as you're moving today. That's the goal. And then you can come up and just stretch the legs forward just because you were on your knees a little bit. Just to give you a little bit of a break, is scrunch up the toes and then fan them out. So point the feet, scrunch up the toes, and then fan them out, flex the feet if you'd like. Scrunch them up again, and then fan them out. And then you can bend the knees, have the hands just underneath the shoulders, and pull the shoulders back in space. As you pull back, you could stay here. You could also let it relax. I'm pulling back. If I'm pulling back too much, I'll feel it in my elbow. Very common. But I'm going to lift my hips off the floor and really push. Pushing. And say you're like, oh, I'm tired or I'm really rigid. You just come down, right? It's okay to come down. Then push through the hands, push through the feet. Move the weight around. Move it forward if you'd like. Right? If I'm moving forward, right, and I keep my hips up, it's more an adjustment of my thoracic spine. If my hips are down, right, this is often it's incorrect or not getting any benefits. It's more loaded in the shoulders. A common stretch, in gymnastics is just bringing the hips forward and, getting into the front of the shoulders. It's really the same position. So what angle you're in, determines what benefits you're going to get. So just have the legs forward again and contract the thighs and then relax the thighs. Contract and relax, contract and relax. And you come into a seated position. And if you had time, horse lie down, take the time. So if you're feeling weak or tired or stressed, relaxation is obviously really important. But if you have so you're gonna go play tennis or you're gonna go for a walk, you could save your relaxation after. But it's good to do. Definitely something that I think is a big part of the practice and making you feel better and just keeping more just peace of mind. So I hope the classes have been helping you. That's why I've been teaching these online since the pandemic. So let me know how they're going. If you have any questions, you could always email me directly or message me directly, and I'd be happy to help you. A video is always better, and that's something that if you're really trying to figure things out, find a teacher that can help you in that way. Or if you're working with someone specific, obviously that's a good way as well. But just getting that, someone wrote to me and said, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Well, I could guess, but if I can actually see it, then it's pretty easy for me to help someone. So if you have that, know that that's always available. I have a class tomorrow, and that's from 9:30 Eastern time. If you'd like to take that class, you can register at my website, jonwittyoga.com, and you get the link to Zoom. It's through it's an online platform. All right, have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay well, and hopefully I'll have you in class soon. Take care.